Welcome to the Women on the Rise podcast. I'm Jen Blandos, the founder and CEO of Female Fusion. And in the podcast, we love to introduce you to the world's most incredible and interesting entrepreneurs and thought leaders that are going to help you build a thriving and profitable business. Welcome to another episode of Women on the Rise, and we are in London talking to fabulous female entrepreneurs. And today I am joined by Adela Cebotari, who is the founder and CEO of TARI CTA Limited, and she is a tax advisor and accountant and is a genius in all things tax. And I know we don't like talking about tax, but it is essential for our businesses. Adela, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Jen, and thank you very much for having me here today.
I'm so happy to have you here. You're one of our founding members here in London as a Female Fusion member. And I remember when you joined Female Fusion, you were just starting out in business, and it's so incredible to see how quickly your business has flourished. Maybe tell everybody a bit about your business and your background.
Well, starting with my background, as you said, rightfully, I'm a qualified tax advisor here in the UK. I started in the tax profession by accident, as most of my colleagues in the profession started in those days. And I took an interest, and I've really been fortunate to have supportive managers, supportive colleagues, and eventually did the certification. And I got to the peak of my career, and to be fair, with the seed planted by you in one of our conversations, you're so good at what you do, why don't you do your own? That seed has sort of grown until eventually last year I set up my tax and accountancy practice, TARI CTA Limited, and I'm not looking back. I'm enjoying the journey, and I am happy how things are progressing. Yes, it's been an interesting year.
It's been really nice to see you go from leaving your day job, as we call it, to having your practice and really seeing that growing. And I wanted to talk to you a bit about that journey, because I know that we have some women that listen to the podcast who have a job, who are working in something. They could be with an accountancy firm or a legal firm, or they could be doctors, or they could be working in advertising or marketing or HR. And they're like, I think I'd like to have my own business. What would you say to people? Because it is a change, right? Going from
Absolutely
being in the corporate world to having your own business. What would your top tips be around that?
First of all, it's not one job. So you're leaving one day job, but when you're starting out, it's not one job, because entrepreneurs wear so many hats during the day. And you have to be aware of what exactly your direction is. So first of all, what is your goal? Why are you setting up your adventure or venture? What is the outcome that you want to have? Not necessarily in year 1, year 2, year 3 from a financial projection. I'll come on to that, because that is the important thing as well. But the initial idea, is it worth investing your time? Because you're not just investing time in creating a business, you're investing in creating a name and a brand. And that's the hard work. So the first steps, making sure that you have a good network, that you can supportive network. And I'm very fortunate with the Female Fusion network that, we're supporting each other, and we're sharing knowledge with each other. We're sharing good and bad stuff, which is really rewarding for me.
Adela, were you surprised when you went from the corporate world to just how many things you had to do in your business? Because we go from doing one role. So let's say, for example, you were providing tax advice, you were tax advisor, to all of a sudden, you're now not just providing tax advice, you are doing your marketing, you are doing the admin, you are doing the invoicing for your business.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck on the finance side. Luckily, you're an expert in that, so that wouldn't be problematic. But all of the other little things to build your business, did you know that you were going to expect that, or were you a little bit taken aback?
Well, I think I was a bit naive at the beginning because, as you say, in the day job, you are good at what you do, and that's one role. When I started in the business, probably day one was a bit, hey, yay, I've got my own business. I've got, my...
Here's my certificate from company's
Yes.
house. Woo!
Yeah, exactly. But then day two came. It's like, okay, so how are you getting your clients? And then how are you making those clients feel that they should trust you? What are you providing that's different? What is your USP? Because anyone can do tax. Why should they work with you? Who else do you need to have in your circle of trusted affiliates that can work with you and that can help your clients, have that holistic approach? And it's just lists and lists of things that kept on adding and adding and adding. It's like, what systems are you going to use? How are you going to make sure your data protection is in place and it's correctly? How are you going to exchange correspondence? Because we're dealing with really sensitive personal data here. We're dealing with people's bank accounts. We're dealing with their lives, really. And how do you make sure that all that is safe and secure? And then the licensing. You've as an accountant, a tax consultant, you have to make sure that you're compliant yourself before
Yes.
you're telling your clients, "Come with me, I'll help with your compliance."
And did you feel that was quite overwhelming?
Well, it was, but then that's where again the female fusion is my savior, because whenever I'm stuck, it's like, so how do I do this? There's a course for that on Female Fusion website, and as a member I have full access of them, and it's so helpful to have the Google Sheets that you've designed and all the other material that are there to support you in the initial stage, and I don't have to go to trawl through thousands and thousands of Google searches.
Oh yeah, I think you're talking about for the Google Sheets, that what we've done is created a number of templates for standard operating procedures,
Yes.
all the things you need in your business, that you copy the Google document to the Google Sheet. You just make a copy of it and put your own branding on it and use it.
Really
Saves you so
helpful.
much time, right?
Really helpful.
I wanted to ask you about new business. And again, a number of people, when they start off in business, they think, okay, I've registered my company, I've set up a website, I've got my bank account, maybe got my Stripe account if you're billing digitally as well. I'm open for business and everybody's going to come.
Wouldn't that be easy?
Wouldn't it be easy? But it doesn't work that way.
Absolutely not.
How have you gone about finding clients? What's been your resource to do that?
With my almost 20 years career in the tax consultancy field, I've been very fortunate that I worked for good companies, and I have been invited to network a lot. And that skill has helped me go back and start tapping on my network, start making sure that my relationships are nurtured as much as possible, because as you can understand, you can't always do everything on your own. But I am an avid networker, and I will try to go to an event with the idea of helping others, and in return, things seem to work out for me as well. Because the more my intention is to go and help others, who can I connect with whom, who can I help get that next client, they will think of me next time.
I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because and what you said is that's a skill, right? That is a skill that you have built over the past 20 years working as a tax advisor for larger corporates, is the idea of giving And when you give, you don't even ask for it and it comes back.
Absolutely not. And it's not just in business, it's in anything in life. If you do something that's rewarding to the next person, in my opinion, and you don't expect anything in return, things somehow work out themselves. Call it the universe, gods, whatever. But that's the principle I've always been operating in my personal life, in my day-to-day. And I'm taking that skill and, the idea into the business as well.
I love that. And thank you for sharing that, because I want that to be something that people who are listening to the podcast remember, that it's not a matter of just turning up to a networking event or DMing somebody on LinkedIn and asking for business. It's really investing that time in the relationship and looking at it from how can I help, rather than asking, what are you going to do for me? I want your money.
That's probably the way that would never work, or rarely works.
Yes.
It's a strategy that I don't really connect with.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk to you about tax, the thing that nobody likes to talk about.
Nope. We all have to do it.
We all have to do it. And, even for those who have businesses in the UAE,
Absolutely.
enjoyed tax freeness for a very long time. And even there's corporation tax there as well. And so I wanted to talk about the importance of, it doesn't matter what size your business is, to have a plan in place for tax and
Absolutely.
the importance of that.
It's really, really important that things are set up from day one. Like myself, I work with many entrepreneurs who are at the beginning of their journey. They have probably, some of them have scaled up really quickly. But if there is no plan in place from day one, then things may slip away. So here in the UK, we don't just have the income tax if you're a sole trader, or corporation tax if you're an enterprise. We also have the VAT. We also have the PAYE system that we need to operate if we're engaging other people. And there are a lot of other conditions that people need to be aware when they're operating a business, so they don't discover that in a letter from HMRC later.
Yeah, and it's like that for people globally, right?
It is.
It's not just unique to the UK. It's like this for all over the world. That pretty much every country in the world has VAT or GST or whatever tax that you're going to call it. Plus, on top of that, some sort of corporation tax, and then other taxes depending upon where you are. What should a business do? So let's go through a few scenarios. Let's talk. Somebody has a brand new business. They're just getting started. What sort of things should they be thinking about from a tax perspective to make sure that they're not going to find themselves in trouble later?
Absolutely. So first of all, understanding what is this business format. So we're all starting from day one, from zero in business, but we are having some dreams or some visions for the, not dreams, because some visions for the business where we want it to be. If we want it to be a big business, scalable, then probably it's making sense incorporating that business from day one. That's not just from a tax perspective, but it's also from a legal perspective. It gives the owner of the business limited liability. So if anything happens, they get sued. The person who's bringing on the issue against them can only go as far as the company's liability, not the individual. So the individual is not hopefully losing their house unless they've done something really, really wrong.
Yes.
So a limited liability would be something to consider, but many people start as a sole trader. So I work with a number of people in the influencer space, and they start as a hobby, and then that hobby transfers itself into a very lucrative business. So understanding the format you can set up your business. Are you a sole trader? Then if you're a sole trader, what are the implications? Because you're taxed directly. You use the money in the business as your own. You are taxed on whatever profits the business makes. Or are you in partnership with somebody, or LLP, limited liability partnership? Having the right contracts in place, having the right insurances in place. And in the UK, we need indemnity insurance or public liability insurances, various other legal matters, as well as considering the tax aspect. Or the last one, as you rightly mentioned, the corporation, setting up a corporate, and then are we employing people? What is that corporate entity's responsibility for when you're employing people? So it's a lot of criteria that needs to be considered from day one. And it all stems from how big do I want this business to be?
Yes, and that goes back as well to having a business plan and
Absolutely.
having the plan for who you're serving, what you're going to be doing, what you will be selling, and what the future looks like. Because I've seen as well that there's people who will not be clear on that and just go, I'm going to have a business and set something up, and then find out that they've set up their business incorrectly, and it can either end up charging them more taxes, or it could be that you have to close that business down and set up a completely different business. And I think one thing that people forget too, and it depends upon the country that you're in,
Absolutely,
right? Because some countries are more flexible than others. But sometimes if you set it up wrong and you have to close it, that means that when you create a new company the correct way, that it's new bank accounts, it's new, for digital payments, whether it's Stripe or another platform. And all of a sudden, if you already have existing clients or customers, to have to set all of that up again is going to take a lot of time and money. And so it's having that vision for the future, that this is where I want my business to go, and understanding that if you haven't done that correctly, that there's going to be so many steps that could cost you extra time and money to correct it to be the right way.
You put it so rightfully. That's why, as I said earlier, it's really important to understand how scalable this business idea is. Because setting up as a corporate entity from the beginning may save you that incorporation transition from sole trader to a company. And then, as you rightfully said, opening a new business bank account, because corporate entities are considered a new person in the eyes of law. And you can no longer use even if you had a business account for your sole trading activity, you can no longer use that account, because everything has to be under the right entity's name and registered correctly.
And when it comes to sole traders as well, because a lot of times when people are sole traders, that they'll have their name as a company name. And this is something that people need to consider, because it is so important to think about where your business is going and how you want people to perceive you. Because if your business seems a little bit small, like being called Jen Blandos Consulting or whatever it is, versus, Female Fusion, one sounds very small and one sounds like a big organization. So what do you think? The small one is going to command less money. And when it, in the eyes of the clients or the customers, they'll be like, well, they have no costs or expenses and they're working from their home, or they're not paying all of these extra fees to have this bigger business. They should be paid less.
Yes, there is definitely that idea behind how we name a business and what the brand stands for. So it's really important. And yesterday at the Female Fusion networking event, we also discussed about how important it is to make sure that you have a all-rounded approach when you're doing your branding, not just the name, the naming, the color, the message that you're putting out there. Is that telling your clients that you are a reputable, trusted business, and they should come and seek your services because you're fabulous and they want to work with you.
Yes, and that goes back to company formation.
Absolutely.
And it's so interesting, like how all of this is linked, but how important it is for us to get it right in the very beginning.
Yes, it's really important to do it, and sometimes it can be challenging because whatever the situation may be, but people may leap at it I need to set up a business, I need to do whatever. But sometimes slowing down to take that bigger leap is so much more beneficial, because it will save you time, it will save you money, because you won't have to redo your website, you won't have to redo all your stationery, you won't have to pay the lawyers new contract fees. So it's a lot of saving if sometimes we slow down
Yes.
in before we take the bigger action.
And that's also why it's important. And I speak about this quite regularly when it comes to when you're setting up your business, especially if you do have these big dreams and it is that you want to grow, that you do consider the taxation implications, the company structure implications, but also as well the legal side. And I find that tax and legal tends to sit together quite a bit.
Definitely. Whenever I take new clients, I always recommend that either I speak with their current legal and financial planning advisor, because I always advise my clients it's important to have this triangle around them.
Yeah.
If they don't have one, I'm always happy to recommend one from my network. And I work with amazing people, both members of Female Fusion and outside Female Fusion network. And it's just so much easier when from day one, we speaking about the client's idea. I am advising them of the steps they need to take in order to set it up correctly from a tax perspective. Then we have the lawyers and the financial advisors on call very often at the same time, just to make sure that we've covered the pension contribution or the pension fund for the company if they're forming a company, and the lawyers are looking at all the legals, the templates, the letters of engagement, the contracts. Sometimes we might have situations where they need trademarking and protection of their rights.
Yeah.
So it depends, varies from business to business. And I'm very happy when clients come to me and say, I've got an idea, I've started maybe very earlier on, I want to make sure things are done right before it gets too complicated. What can you do?
Because it can cost you a lot more money.
Yeah.
And I learned this, I remember, and actually you helped me fix this. So you've been my tax advisor for years, and I've worked with you when you were in the corporate side as well. And I remember I had a business in Belgium, and the business in Belgium, we had not taken proper legal advice. I had a business in the UK, a business in Belgium, a business in the UAE. And the way that the people, I made the mistake, and I want to make this point, because if people are thinking about expanding their business, and you know me, I'm always like, think big.
Always.
Always think big.
And it's great you're doing, because we're following.
Yeah, well, but the mistake that I made and I learned is that I went to a taxation advisor and a company setup advisor in Belgium to set up my business there. But what I should have done is spoken to you. Actually, I don't think you were my advisor at that time. You helped me get out of this mistake afterwards. But the mistake that had happened is that they didn't properly take into consideration that my headquarters were in the UK. And so it was set up with the wrong structure. They set it up as a limited company rather than a branch of my company there. And it had big tax implications for my business in the UK. Yeah. And those are things that you wouldn't naturally think of. And also as well, you can't expect the person in the other country to naturally know the tax laws of the country where your head office is. Yeah. So to also remember that, because I think sometimes people will go, well, I've got an office here. I'm just going to fly to that country and set up there, because it means if I set up a business in this country, maybe it's tax-free or lower tax, and not understand the working dynamics between different countries. And it's not just the UK, it's all over the world.
All over the world. And yes, interpreting the double taxation agreements is something that we specialize in, particularly because we work with clients on the international arena, and understanding what set up with the, particularly when businesses are growing and they are expanding, as you said, in different countries, making sure that we are clear on our UK obligations, but how is that interacting with the international tax regulations, and then what does it say as between the double taxation agreement between the UK and the respective country. So it's a lot of work behind it, and sometimes it's not visible because it might be just one liner to the client saying yay or nay, do this or do that, but behind that sentence there's so much work going on to make sure that we first understand completely correctly the implications and the and you know what country has the rights to taxation in that situation.
So I'm going to give you a scenario because I'm sure that some of our members are thinking of this, or some of our listeners. Let's say I have a business, it doesn't matter what country in the world, that I see a number of opportunities in a different country and I want to set up a business there. What would be the right steps for that? Would they first need to speak with their tax advisor in the home country where they have the first business, and then look at what that structure would be in the other country? What would you recommend?
Generally, that would be my first advice. Speak with your local advisor so you understand correctly how that country's position is in right to taxation of any income or profits arising from your business in another country. So it may be the situation that you are only going to the other country, occasionally and doing some business there. Then that might not be a situation where you're called a branch, because you're just doing business, and it's a normal process that many enterprises do. Or are you really establishing yourself as a permanent establishment in that other country? Then the circumstances change, and then you have the double taxation issue, because you're probably not just having a branch, but you're probably going to have somebody to run that branch for you, and then you're having employees, and that's where the situation gets more complicated.
So one reason why you need to ask a tax advisor.
Exactly, a tax advisor and a legal advisor at the same time in this situation.
Okay, I have another scenario for you, because I'm thinking of all the scenarios that listeners could encounter. There are a number of people who are getting involved in like either digital products or digital services. And as their business starts to scale, doesn't matter, let's say they have a business somewhere in Europe, whether it's the UK or Europe or somewhere, and decide that they want to take that business to a jurisdiction where there is no tax and run that business from there. But they're actually not living in that country, but they have set up a business in that country. I know a number of people think that that is a way of having a business not having to pay tax in their home country or the country that they're living in. What are considerations that they need to think about to avoid them getting into potential trouble with their home country's tax authorities?
Well, the general principle in relation to taxation of a corporation is based on where its place of management and control is. So if a company is set up in another country, but it only has one director, and that director doesn't live in that country, and the director is managing all the operations of the country from another country where he is resident, then you have an issue. Because I don't know, obviously I don't know all the double taxation agreements, and I don't know all the countries' taxation regulation, but speaking from a UK perspective, and this is similar with a huge number of other countries. In that situation, even if you would have set up your company in the UK or in Cayman Island, let's say, because that's a tax-free zone, I don't know the rules in Cayman Island, but you would unlikely be treated as having your company run from Cayman Island if you were running it from the UK still. And the UK would still insist on taxing your business in the UK, because you as the director are holding the place and management and control of that country in the UK.
Thank you for explaining that clearly, because I wanted to just give you a few scenarios so people could think about that, because I think sometimes what happens is you go, oh, I met somebody and they have this business and it's in this country or that country and their tax rate is lower, they're not paying any tax. They set up a business there because they met somebody and they heard about it and didn't actually do the research to find out how that's relevant to their personal situation.
Yeah, that's very true. And again, I'm returning back to those double taxation agreements. So if Cayman Island and, I don't know, another country have this agreement, that it doesn't matter where the director's living, if the company is registered in Cayman Island, then we're only taxing them. Obviously not taxing because there's no tax in Cayman Island.
Yeah.
That would be a potential situation. But the starting point for everybody embarking on those kind of schemes, or arrangements, shall we say, rather than schemes, they should always check with their local tax advisor first. Because it's really expensive setting up. There may not be tax in Cayman Island, but setting up the business and getting all the licenses is quite expensive from what I know. So just to save that expense, it's best to take advice first.
And from my previous experience where I had that slight slip up in Belgium, I think it cost me probably that mistake about 40,000 euros. It wasn't like it wasn't cheap.
Yeah.
And it took a long time, and it probably actually would have cost more, because the other problem as well is it increased my tax rate in the UK, which is where the problem was, that the tax advisor and the people we dealt with in Belgium didn't understand how it worked in the UK. So I just wanted to make that point, because we don't think that it's a problem, and you've got this euphoria of like, we've got these contracts and they've asked us to set up this business in this market and it's so great. But it can really be deflating for you if you find out
Absolutely.
that business that you set up has been done incorrectly.
Yeah, and it's a lot of hard work for the business owners. Not only you have to work across time zones often, but then having a situation where communication wasn't done very well, and at the end of it, you end up with a very, very big tax bill, which probably wasn't expected. Yes, it is deflating, and it can be detrimental not just to the business, but to the individual from a mental health perspective.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. While we're on tax, I want to talk about a different tax, and that is VAT or GST or whatever it is called in your country. Just to kind of explain how it works, because some business owners, especially if you haven't had a business before, find this tax scary and feel that it is a cost and a charge on them to reach a threshold where they have to charge GST or VAT within their business. Can you, for people who don't fully understand that, can you explain a little bit about how that tax works and how it's actually not an expense on your business?
Of course. So I'll explain from the UK perspective, but the principle is applied globally. The rates obviously are different from country to country. As I remember, in UAE, it's 5%, the base rate.
Yep.
And lucky you, in the UK is 20%. And I hope it stays that and doesn't go up. So VAT in the UK, generally, if you're a business, sole trader, partnership or corporation, it doesn't matter what format you're set up in, if your income, and when I say income, what you charge your client gross, is more than 90,000 in a rolling 12 months period, then you have an obligation to register for VAT. So to put it into an example, if you start your business on 1st of January, if by 31st of December, your total take-ins is 90,000 or more, then you have to register within 30 days and then start charging VAT from the date that you are told by the local government.
I just want to interrupt on that. So that is basically the maximum threshold, and
Yes.
every country has a maximum threshold, and it's kind of pretty similar for most countries. So UK is £90,000. The UAE, for example, is 370,000 dirhams, which is like roughly $100,000. So it kind of around that same amount. But then there's also something which is a minimum threshold in many countries as well. So there's the amount where if you don't register, you're in trouble and you're going to get a fine. So you don't want to do that. But then there's the minimum amount once you reach that you can register for VAT.
In the UK, we don't have a minimum. That's the limit from when you are required. But you can register voluntarily if your business is growing, or if you're expected to reach that threshold much sooner than 12 months. And that's why it's important from the beginning to have a correct pricing strategy. Because if you're saying to your clients, I am charging £1,000 an hour, when you start charging VAT, so when the obligation for you to start charging VAT arises, then you have to charge your clients £1,200 because you have to add 20% to your fee. What would your clients say when they come? When you come with a new bill, it was 1,000 last month. This month is going to be 1,200. They're probably not going to like that very much, and that can be detrimental to the business.
Especially if the client that you're doing the work for is not VAT registered.
Yes.
And that's because then that's like a 20% increase in the price that they weren't expecting.
Yes, that's very true. And going back to that day one and having that business plan, having that discussion with your tax advisor and your legal advisor, it's really, really important. And I can't stress enough how important it is, because it will save money and potentially the business, probably the business's reputation in a way. If you have clients, if you have built up a number of clients up to the point of registration, and then all of a sudden all are hit with this extra 20% because it wasn't implemented in your pricing strategy, it can take the business to a dive rather than a growth for a period.
Absolutely. I don't know what you think of this, but one of the things that I've always done, and I recommend to our members as well, especially if you're doing something like consultancy and you're doing proposals, is to mention that the fee that you are quoting excludes any taxes.
Absolutely.
And that's especially important if you're working internationally as well, because you get into the realm of different countries might have withholding taxes or other taxes that get added in that you wouldn't know about at the time that you do the proposal or it's approved.
Yeah.
So at least you have something that you can fall back on.
Yeah, and it's part of the contract, and I totally agree with you that it should be mentioned, that either mention if you're not registered yet, that at the point of registration VAT will be added. It can be for new starters if a discussion or if research is not taking place at the beginning of their journey, that can be omitted. And that's where, again, I keep emphasizing taking advice, making sure that the contracts are designed correctly, even if you're not yet registered for VAT.
Yeah. Would you recommend to a business that as soon as they're able to register for VAT, that they register for VAT?
It very much depends on the nature of the business. If the business is incurring a lot of expenses on which they are paying VAT themselves, then of course there is merit in registering early. So there's a way, and I've done a couple of applications recently for my clients, because we can see the scalability in the next sort of 12 months. We can see that they're going to reach the threshold anyway, but at the point of setting up, they've incurred a lot of costs in buying cameras, in buying equipment, in buying software, and it really makes sense, because they can get that refunded to them when they do through their VAT reporting system.
And it is I've seen some people that are like, oh, I have to register for VAT. It's such a bad thing. And I'm like, no, this is great. Like, it's so great that you've built your business to a level that you can charge VAT.
Absolutely. And having a VAT number very often gives that reassurance to the clients, that credibility reassurance.
That you're a proper
that
business.
you are a proper business and that you are a growing business, because you have had to register for VAT. So there are benefits in registering even earlier for credibility purposes as well.
All really valid points and very important for founders to think about. And one thing I wanted to mention as well is also the importance of a tracking system.
Yes.
That it really scares me when I see people doing things on Excel.
I'm with you on that.
Like, we have the technology now, and this is where where it's really important when it comes to automating things in your business, that one of those automations is that you need to have your numbers automated, so it makes it easy not only from an invoicing point of view, but you're also able to identify how the business is doing. Are you falling short one month? You need to be able to track those numbers.
You couldn't have said it better than Jen. I work with clients from initially when they set up the business, sometimes a bit later than I would have liked with some of them. But helping them implement that initial system in place where they have visibility. So everything from the business bank account is visible in the system. So we know exactly. So when we're looking at every quarter, we know what is their corporation tax liability expected, what is their VAT liability for every quarter. If they engage employees, then we know exactly how much PAYE they have to pay. So it's so important. And it helps with automation. The clients don't have to invest a lot of time, going through spreadsheets and doing search and doing whatever values and formulas, and none of that. Just an investment in a sound piece of software that we recommend our clients have. And it's helping them and it's helping us as well.
What are your, I'm going to ask for your favorite accounting platforms, because I love hearing from tax advisors, accountants, what their favorites are. What are your top ones for entrepreneurs? What do you recommend?
For startup entrepreneurs, and this is totally free, no commission. I don't get any commission from sharing here. I recommend Free Agent because it gives them access. If the setup is correct, then it gives them free access, but they will need to have a bank account with a specific bank.
Okay, so that's very much a UK product.
It's very much a UK product.
Okay.
But from an international perspective, then obviously there's Xero and there's QuickBooks. So those are the three that we really work with.
Excellent. Now, Adela, aside from talking about tax and money and all of these things, we were talking earlier about how you really like to give and how you're giving back. And one of the things that I've seen you working on a lot lately as well is that you've been supporting a not-for-profit. Can you tell me a little bit about that and how you've been helping them as well?
Absolutely. And this is, I hope we have time because I can talk for days about Mad Aid.
We got a couple minutes.
I'll be short. So I am in the process of becoming a trustee for a charity called Mad Aid. We are, it's an established charity for over 10 years now. And our main priority is improving medical conditions in hospitals across Eastern Europe. And particularly, we're concentrating at Moldova, a country that I'm proudly from. And at the moment, we are raising £500,000 to refurbish 2 units in the Mother and Child Hospital in Moldova. So my role that I've taken on is fundraising and helping deliver the change where it's needed and bringing better facilities to people.
I love this with our members. I was just thinking when I heard you speak that I see so many of our members care so much about impact and helping other people. And I love seeing this, that it's also as well slightly different from what you're doing in your new day job. And I've seen how much this really lights you up and how you've really been helping this charity. And I've met Victoria, who is the founder of the charity as well. And so amazing work to you and Victoria. And I really look forward to hearing about how it goes and how you find being a trustee as well.
Well, being part of the Madrid is such a big community. We have a big diaspora of Moldovans and Romanians speaking across the world. And Victoria has done an amazing job just getting those people together and making change. So we built one of a kind in Eastern Europe, a day center for children with disabilities. In May, we've finished refurbishing one of the units in the Mother of Child Hospital. And that's why we've taken on the challenge of bringing more great projects, because we've seen how much big impact this makes. So, if somebody's donating regularly £10 a month, that's 2 coffees, but that £10 is making such a difference you wouldn't believe.
Thank you so much for doing that, and to you and Victoria for making such a big impact in Moldova as well. And for sharing, taxes, a lot of people think tax can be boring. And okay, I mean, it is a little bit.
Can be.
Sorry. But it's also really important to get it right in our business. And I find that it can actually be really interesting to play around with it, to understand how we get the structure right so we can build the most profitable businesses as well. Adela, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. And thank you for being just such a beautiful, caring, kind, supportive member of Female Fusion as well.
Thank you, Jen. You are an inspiration, and it's a great pleasure to be here.
Thanks.
I don't know about you, but social media can feel pretty overwhelming sometimes as a business owner. It just feels like there is constant work that always needs to be done, which is why I have recorded for you a completely free 45-minute masterclass called Marketing Without Social Media. And inside, I share with you my tools and techniques that I use to grow Female Fusion and the other businesses that I have had. So I give you the tools, the techniques, and the frameworks to put that in place in your own business. All you need to do is head over to femalefusionnetwork.com/marketing.